Naomi Ellison had everything money could buy, except the one thing her heart truly wanted. When the billionaire heiress kissed her family's humble driver in a dimly lit garage, she thought no one was watching. But the blinking red light of a security camera captured everything. What started as one impulsive moment would ignite a scandal that threatened to destroy not just her reputation, but the very foundation of her privileged world. Gabriel Layton, her mother's chosen suitor, wouldn't let rejection slide so easily. And when he discovered the footage, he saw the perfect weapon to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. But sometimes the powerful underestimate the strength of true love, and sometimes the quiet ones fight back harder than anyone expects. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this story of forbidden love, family betrayal, and a man who refused to stay silent will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about destiny. The elevator doors closed with a soft whisper. Naomi Ellison pressed her back against the cool metal wall and let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her black gala dress rustled as she shifted, the silk heavy against her skin. The charity dinner had ended an hour ago, but her face still hurt from smiling. She pushed the button for the garage level. Just for a minute, she told herself. Just to breathe. The townhouse garage smelled like motor oil and rain. Dim lights cast long shadows between the parked cars. Naomi's heels clicked against the concrete as she made her way past her mother's silver Bentley and the backup sedan. That's when she saw him. Evan Rourke stood beside the black town car, checking something under the hood. His white dress shirt was rolled up at the sleeves. His dark hair caught the overhead light. He moved with the kind of steady focus that always made her pause and watch. "Hey," she said softly. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Miss Ellison, everything okay?" She almost smiled at that. Evan always asked if she was okay. In 3 months of late-night drives home from events, he'd learned to read her moods. When she was tired, he turned the radio down low. When she was stressed, he took the long way through the park. He never pushed for conversation, but he always listened when she talked. "Can you wait with me for a minute?" she asked. "In the car?" He nodded without question. That's what she liked about Evan. He didn't need explanations for everything. She climbed into the back seat of the sedan. The leather was soft and familiar. Evan slid into the driver's seat but left the engine running. The quiet hum filled the space between them. "Rough night?" he asked, catching her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Gabriel Layton asked me to marry him," she said. The words came out flat. Evan's hands stilled on the steering wheel. "Oh, I said I needed time to think." "Do you?" She met his gaze in the mirror. "Think? Need time?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Naomi knew the answer. She'd known it for weeks. Gabriel was everything her mother wanted for her, successful, well-connected, from the right family. He was safe, approved, expected. He was also boring as paint. "No," she whispered. Footsteps echoed down the garage ramp. Naomi's stomach dropped as Gabriel's voice called out, "Naomi, are you down there?" Panic shot through her chest. Gabriel would find her here, hiding in a car with the driver. He'd ask questions. He'd make assumptions. Worse, he'd tell her mother. Without thinking, Naomi leaned forward and pressed her lips to Evan's. The kiss was supposed to be quick, a distraction, a way to send Gabriel running. But the moment their mouths touched, everything else disappeared. Evan's lips were warm and gentle. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing against her cheek. Time stopped. When they broke apart, Gabriel was gone. But the red light on the security camera by the service door blinked once, twice, 3 times. "I'm sorry," Naomi breathed, her forehead still touching his. "But I'm not." She kissed him once more, soft and quick, then slipped out of the car. Her heels echoed as she walked to the elevator. She didn't look back, but she felt his eyes on her until the doors closed. Evan sat in the idling car for a long time after she left. His fingers touched his lips. The camera's LED flickered in the corner of his vision, but he didn't care. He'd been driving for the Ellison family for 8 months, professional, polite, invisible. But Naomi had never been invisible to him. She said please and thank you. She asked about his sister Tessa at the hospital. She remembered that he liked his coffee black and sometimes brought him a cup from the kitchen. The kiss changed everything and nothing. He was still just the driver. She was still the heiress who lived in a world he'd never belonged to. But for 30 seconds in a dim garage, none of that had mattered. The whisper started at 6:45 the next morning. "You see this?" Marcus, one of the junior staff, held up his phone to Danny, the day security guard. Danny squinted at the screen. A grainy image showed a woman's hand on a man's sleeve. The woman wore an expensive dress. The man sat behind a steering wheel. "That's Miss Naomi," Danny said. "And Evan." Marcus swiped to another image. "Someone posted these on the neighborhood blog. Says they were kissing." Danny took a closer look. "Could be anything. Picture's too blurry to tell." But the damage was already done. By the time Evan walked into the driver's room at 7, the story had grown legs. Hushed voices stopped when he entered. Eyes followed him to the coffee machine. Mr. Arthur Pike, the estate manager, stood at the assignment board. He was a tall, thin man with kind eyes and gray hair. He'd worked for the Ellison family for 23 years. He distributed the morning assignments without comment, but Evan caught him watching. "Evan," Mr. Pike said after the others left. "A word." Evan's chest tightened. "Yes, sir." "Your record here is spotless. Keep it that way." Mr. Pike's voice was gentle but firm. "Sometimes rumors start from nothing. Sometimes they don't. Either way, steady is best." "Yes, sir." But as Evan walked to his assigned car, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Coffee?" "Daylight." He stared at the message for a full minute before responding. "If it's honest." Upstairs, Naomi sat at her bedroom window with her laptop open. The neighborhood blog headline made her stomach turn. "Heiress in the garage?" The accompanying photo was blurry but clear enough. Her hand on Evan's arm. The expensive fabric of her dress catching the light. The comments were worse. Speculation about her slumming it with the help. Crude jokes about rich girls and working men. Questions about whether her mother knew. Her phone buzzed with Evan's reply. She smiled despite herself. Honest. That was so like him. Direct. No games. She was typing back when her bedroom door opened. "Good morning, darling." Her mother, Marjorie Ellison, glided in with her usual grace. At 56, she was still stunning. Silver hair in a perfect bob. A cream silk blouse that probably cost more than most people made in a month. "Morning, Mom." Marjorie's eyes flicked to the laptop screen. If she saw the blog post, she didn't mention it. Instead, she perched on the edge of the bed like a bird settling on a branch. "Gabriel called this morning," she said. "He seemed upset." Naomi closed the laptop. "I imagine he was. He said you needed time to think about his proposal." Marjorie's voice carried just a hint of question. "I did think. The answer is no." Her mother's face tightened almost invisibly. "Naomi, he's not right for me, Mom. He's a good man, successful. He cares about you. He cares about the idea of me." Naomi stood, needing to move. "Gabriel wants a wife who will look good at his business dinners and give him beautiful children to show off. He doesn't want me." "And what do you want?" The question hung between them like a bridge neither wanted to cross. Naomi thought of warm brown eyes in a rearview mirror, of steady hands on a steering wheel, of a man who asked if she was okay and actually listened to the answer. "I want someone who sees me," she said finally. Marjorie stood as well, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her skirt. "We'll let this Gabriel situation pass, darling. There will be other opportunities." She kissed Naomi's cheek and headed for the door, but she paused at the threshold, not quite looking back. Sometimes what we want and what's best for us are different things. That's when we must choose wisdom over impulse. The door closed with a soft click. Naomi stared at it for a long moment, then picked up her phone and typed a single word. Hearts. 1, 2. At 9 o'clock, Naomi made her way down to the driver's room. The household staff had their own break area in the basement level, a comfortable space with couches, a small kitchen, and windows that looked out onto the garden. Mr. Pike was there, polishing a clipboard that probably didn't need polishing. He looked up as she entered, his expression carefully neutral. "Miss Naomi, how can I help you?" "I'd like a word with Evan, if that's all right." Mr. Pike glanced toward the corner where Evan sat reading a paperback novel. "Of course. I'll be in my office if you need anything." He left, but Naomi noticed he didn't go far. The door to his office stayed cracked open. She appreciated that he was giving them space while still being present. Mr. Pike had always been protective of both the family and the staff. Evan stood as she approached. "Miss Ellison?" "Naomi," she said, "please." They sat at a small table by the window. For a moment, neither spoke. Naomi studied his hands wrapped around a coffee mug. Working hands, clean but calloused, strong. "About last night," she began. "You don't owe me an explanation." "Yes, I do." She leaned forward. "That kiss, it wasn't pity, Evan, or some rich girl playing games." His eyes met hers. "What was it then?" "It was 3 months of you driving me home and asking how my day was. It was you remembering that I like the radio on low when I'm tired. It was you listening when I talked about my work at the foundation and actually caring about the answers." She paused, gathering courage. "It was me realizing that you're the only person in my life who sees me instead of just seeing Naomi Ellison, the heiress." Evan set down his coffee mug. "And what happens now?" "I don't know, but I know I won't pretend it didn't happen." "Good," he said quietly, "because I won't be anyone's secret. I've got too much respect for myself and for you to hide in shadows." Relief washed over her. She'd been afraid he'd want to keep things quiet to protect his job. Instead, he was asking for exactly what she wanted, honesty. "Coffee at Hart's Diner," she said. 1 o'clock? He nodded once. "I'll be there." Hart's Diner sat on the corner of 5th and Main, a throwback to an earlier time with red vinyl booths and a checkerboard floor. Naomi had driven past it hundreds of times but never been inside. It was the kind of place where working people grabbed lunch, not where heiresses took meetings. Perfect. She arrived at exactly 1 o'clock and chose a booth facing the street. No baseball cap, no sunglasses. If someone wanted to see Naomi Ellison having coffee with her family's driver, let them look. Evan slid into the seat across from her 3 minutes later. He wore dark jeans and a blue button-down shirt, simple clothes that made his eyes look almost gray in the afternoon light. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for asking." The waitress appeared, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her Namatag read Darla. "What can I get you folks?" Darla asked. Naomi ordered a turkey sandwich and coffee. Evan asked for the meatloaf special. Darla poured their coffee from a glass pot and left them alone. "So," Evan said, stirring cream into his cup. "Ground rules?" "No PR talk," Naomi said immediately. "This isn't about managing my image or protecting anyone's reputation. It's just us." "Agreed." He leaned back in the booth. "Tell me something real." "What do you mean?" "Something that has nothing to do with charity galas or family expectations. Something that's just Naomi." She thought for a moment. "I love taking the ferry. There's a route that goes around the harbor in the evening. When I was little, my dad used to take me on Sunday afternoons. We'd stand at the rail and count seagulls." She smiled at the memory. "He died when I was 16, but I still take that ferry sometimes. It's the only place I feel like myself." "That's beautiful," Evan said, and she could tell he meant it. "What about you?" "I rebuilt a 1969 Mustang with my dad before he passed. Took us 3 years. I still have it. Keeps threatening to die, but I can't let it go." He grinned. "Tessa says I'm sentimental." "Tessa's your sister?" "Yeah, she's a nurse at General Hospital, works double shifts to help pay for her nursing school loans. She's the strongest person I know." Naomi found herself smiling. She'd heard him take phone calls from Tessa during long drives, short conversations about grocery lists and bills. But his voice always got softer when he talked to his sister. Their food arrived, and they kept talking about movies and books and places they wanted to travel. Normal conversation between two people getting to know each other. No mention of trust funds or family names or social expectations. It was wonderful. Halfway through lunch, Naomi noticed a man in the next booth turn slightly in his seat. She caught the flash of a phone camera pointing their way. "We're being photographed," she said quietly. Evan tensed. "Want to leave?" "No." She reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were warm and slightly rough from working on cars. "Let them take pictures. I'm not hiding." When they finished eating, Darla brought the check along with a small paper bag. "Apple pie," she said with a wink. "On the house. You two seem like you could use something sweet." Outside the diner, they stood on the sidewalk for a moment. A woman walking past whispered to her companion, "That's her, the Ellison girl." Naomi felt Evan start to pull his hand away, but she held on tighter. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not running. For asking for honesty instead of secrecy." "Thank you for choosing daylight," he said. A businessman hurried past, phone pressed to his ear. "You'll never guess who I just saw at Hart's Diner," he said. Naomi and Evan looked at each other and started to laugh. The photo would be online within an hour, towards the year. Whispers would turn into headlines. Her mother would have opinions. Gabriel would be furious. The household staff would buzz with gossip. But standing there on the sidewalk, holding hands with a man who saw her, really saw her, none of that seemed to matter. "What happens next?" Evan asked. "I guess we find out together," Naomi said. He squeezed her fingers once before letting go. "I can live with that." As they walked to their cars, neither of them noticed the black sedan parked across the street. Gabriel Layton sat behind the wheel, his jaw tight as he watched them laugh together. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number for the city's most popular gossip blogger. Some stories needed help getting told. By evening, the photo from Hart's Diner was everywhere. Naomi sat on her bed, laptop open, scrolling through the comments. The picture showed her hand covering Evan's on the table. Her face was relaxed, genuinely happy. She was looking at him like he was the only person in the room, because he was. The headlines were predictable. Heiress slums it with driver. Ellison girl's garage romance. Rich girl, working man, real love or rebellion. Her phone rang. Evan's number. "Hi," she said. "You okay?" His voice was concerned. "I saw the picture." "I'm fine. We knew this would happen." "Yeah, but seeing it is different than expecting it." She could hear traffic in the background. He was probably driving home from his shift. "Evan, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When you said you wouldn't be anyone's secret, did you mean it, even if it costs you your job?" There was a pause. Am I a pause or a choice, Naomi? The question hit her like a punch to the chest. She thought of Gabriel's proposal the night before, of her mother's carefully worded warnings, of the safe, approved life everyone expected her to live. "You're a choice," she said firmly. "Then yes, I meant it." A soft knock on her bedroom door interrupted the call. "Naomi?" Her mother's voice carried through the wood. "The Hendersons are calling in 5 minutes. They want to discuss the museum luncheon. Major donors, important people, the kind of call that couldn't wait." "I have to go," Naomi said into the phone. "I know. Take care of yourself." "You too." She hung up and opened the door to find her mother waiting in the hallway. Marjorie's expression was carefully controlled, but Naomi could see the tension around her eyes. "Everything all right, darling?" "Everything's perfect," Naomi said. It was the first time she'd said that in years and actually meant it. In his small apartment across town, Evan set down his phone and stared at the wall. His building wasn't much, a converted warehouse with thin walls and old radiators that clanged through the night. But it was home. His and Tessa's. They'd worked too hard to get here to lose it all over a rich girl's complicated life. But Naomi wasn't just any rich girl. She was the woman who bought coffee for the entire night shift when she came home late from events, who asked about his sister's schooling and remembered the answers, who looked at him in the diner like he was exactly where she wanted to be. His phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. "Heard you made the gossip pages. Good for you." He smiled despite himself. Trust his sister to cut straight to the heart of it. Another text. "It's real, isn't it?" He thought of Naomi's hand in his on the diner table, of the way she'd looked when she said he was a choice, not a pause. "Yeah," he typed back. "I think it is. Then fight for it. You deserve to be chosen, Evan, out loud and in daylight." He set the phone down and looked around his small living room. The fairy token collection on the bookshelf, souvenirs from Sunday afternoon, rides around the harbor. The photo of him and Tessa at her nursing school graduation, the stack of books he read during long waits in the driver's room. It was a good life, simple but honest. He wouldn't apologize for it. If Naomi wanted to be part of it, she was welcome. If her world couldn't handle that, they'd make a new world. Together. Outside his window, the city lights twinkled like stars. Somewhere across town, Naomi was probably dealing with phone calls and family pressure and all the complications that came with choosing love over expectation. But she'd made the choice. In daylight, holding his hand for everyone to see. That was enough to build on, That was enough to fight for. The next morning brought fresh headlines and old wounds. Naomi found her mother in the library at 8 o'clock, sitting behind the mahogany desk with a neat stack of papers. Marjorie wore a pale yellow suit that made her look like spring sunshine, but her smile felt more like winter frost. "Good morning, darling. Sleep well?" Naomi poured herself coffee from the silver service. "Well enough." "I've had calls?" Marjorie gestured to the papers. "The Hendersons, the museum board, Gabriel's mother." Of course Gabriel's mother had called. Patricia Layton probably saw the diner photo as a personal insult. Her perfect son rejected for a working man. "I'm sorry they're concerned," Naomi said carefully. "Are you?" Marjorie picked up the top paper, a typed statement. "Our PR firm drafted this response. It calls Evan a valued employee and suggests the photos were misleading." Naomi read the statement twice. Every word was carefully chosen to protect the family image while making Evan disappear. He became staff instead of a person. Their relationship became a misunderstanding instead of a choice. "No," she said, setting the paper down. "Naomi. He's not a statement, Mom. He's not a problem to solve or a scandal to manage." Naomi's voice stayed calm, but her hands shook slightly. "His name is Evan Rourke. He's 29 years old. He rebuilt a car with his father and he takes care of his sister, and he's never once treated me like anything less than a person worth knowing." Marjorie's face softened just a fraction. "I'm trying to protect you." "From what? From being happy?" "From being hurt." Marjorie stood and walked to the window that overlooked the garden. "Your father fell in love with me when I was a waitress at a downtown diner. Did you know that?" Naomi's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "What?" 28 years ago. I was working 3 jobs to pay for business school. He was already wealthy, already established. His family thought I was after his money." Marjorie's voice grew quiet. "Some days I wonder if they were right. Mom, I loved him. God knows I loved that man with everything in me. But love doesn't always survive the pressure, Naomi. His world became my world, and I lost pieces of myself along the way. I don't want that for you. And you don't want it for Evan either." Marjorie turned from the window. "What I want is for you to think carefully about what you're asking of him, and of yourself." Naomi left the library feeling like she'd been turned inside out. She'd never known about her mother's past, never imagined Marjorie as anything other than the polished society wife she'd always been. Her phone buzzed with a text from Evan. "Everything okay?" She stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "Can you meet me in the driver's room? 5 minutes? On my way." Evan was waiting by the window when she arrived. Mr. Pike sat at his desk doing paperwork, but he nodded as she entered. "Mr. Pike?" Naomi said. "Could we have a moment?" "Of course." He gathered his papers and headed for the door. "I'll be checking the garage if you need me." When they were alone, Evan studied her face. "What happened?" "My mother wants me to release a statement, says you're a valued employee and that the photos were taken out of context." "Ah," Evan sat down heavily. "And?" I said no. Relief flickered across his features. "Good. But she also told me something I didn't know, about my father." Naomi sat across from him. "They met when she was working as a waitress. His family didn't approve." "And?" "And maybe she's right to be scared." The words came out in a rush. "Maybe I'm asking too much of you, of us. This isn't just about gossip, Evan. It's about my entire world, judging everything you do, every word you say, every choice you make." Evan leaned forward. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When you're with me, really with me, like yesterday at the diner, do you feel like yourself?" "Yes." "Then that's all I need to know." He reached for her hands. "I'm not afraid of your world, Naomi. I'm afraid of hiding from it. If we're going to do this, we do it honest. No apologies. Even if it gets complicated? Especially then." A soft knock interrupted them. Mr. Pike's voice came through the door. "Miss Naomi, your mother would like to see you in the morning room." Naomi sighed. "Duty calls." "Wait." Evan pulled out his phone. "What are you doing tonight?" "Nothing important?" "Tessa gets off her shift at 7. Want to meet her? Nothing fancy. Just coffee at the hospital cafe." Naomi's heart swelled. Meeting his sister felt significant, real, like he was letting her into his life the same way she was letting him into hers. I'd love that. The morning room faced the garden, all white furniture and fresh flowers. Marjorie sat in her usual chair, pouring tea from bone china cups. Sit, please, she gestured to the chair across from her. I've been thinking about our conversation. Naomi sat but didn't reach for the tea. And? I called your father's old friend, Robert Morrison. He knew Evan's father. Knew him? James Rourke worked construction for Morrison Development. Robert says he was one of the best foremen he ever hired. Honest, reliable, never missed a day of work until he got sick. Marjorie's voice softened. He died when Evan was 24, left him to raise his teenage sister alone. Naomi felt something tight in her chest loosen. You checked up on him. I checked up on his character. There's a difference. Marjorie finally met her eyes. Robert says the son is just like his father, stands by his word, takes care of his responsibilities. Mom, I'm not giving you my blessing, Naomi, not yet, but I'm not releasing that statement either. She picked up her teacup with steady hands. If you're determined to do this, at least do it smart. No sneaking around, no half measures. If Evan Rourke is worth the complication, then treat him like he is. It wasn't approval, but it wasn't a wall either. Naomi felt herself smile for the first time since breakfast. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. General Hospital's cafe smelled like disinfectant and coffee. Naomi found Evan at a corner table at 7:15, talking to a woman with the same warm brown eyes and dark hair. She wore blue scrubs and had her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Naomi, Evan stood as she approached. This is my sister Tessa. Tessa stood too, offering her hand. The famous Naomi Ellison. You're prettier than your pictures. And you're exactly like Evan described, strong and direct. Naomi shook her hand, liking the firm grip. They sat down together. Tessa had obviously just finished a long shift. There were tired lines around her eyes, but her smile was genuine. So, Tessa said, stirring sugar into her coffee, you kissed my brother in a garage. Tessa, Evan started. What? I'm just stating facts. Tessa grinned at Naomi. Good choice. He's been moping around for months, talking about some woman he drives around who's different from what you'd expect. I don't mope, Evan protested. You absolutely mope. Remember when you thought she was dating that Gabriel guy? You played sad music for a week. Naomi felt heat rise in her cheeks. You were jealous? Completely, Evan admitted, which made absolutely no sense, since you were just my employer's daughter and I was just the driver. Except you were never just anything to me, Naomi said quietly. Tessa set down her coffee cup. Okay, I like her. She can stay. They talked for an hour. Tessa told stories about Evan rebuilding the Mustang, how he'd spent every weekend for 2 years in their apartment building's parking lot, covered in grease and cursing at stubborn bolts. Naomi shared memories of her father, how he used to take her on ferry rides and teach her to spot different types of boats. You should come to dinner Sunday, Tessa said as they prepared to leave. Nothing fancy. I make a mean spaghetti sauce. I'd love that, Naomi said, meaning it. Outside the hospital, Evan walked Naomi to her car, a modest Honda she drove when she wanted to blend in. Your sister is wonderful, she said. She likes you too. That's not always easy to earn. Evan? Naomi touched his arm. My mother did some research about your father. His face went carefully neutral. Oh? She knows what kind of man he was, what kind of man you are. She stepped closer. It matters to her. Character matters. And to you? To me, you matter, period. He kissed her then, soft and sweet under the hospital parking lot lights. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. Whatever happens next, she said, we handle it together. Together, he agreed. The weekend brought new challenges. Saturday's gossip blog featured a longer article with photos from both the garage and the diner. Someone had been busy gathering information. The piece speculated about Naomi's rebellion phase and questioned whether Evan was taking advantage of his position. Worse, Gabriel had scheduled a coffee meeting with Marjorie. Naomi found them in the garden at noon, sitting at the wrought iron table where she used to have tea parties as a child. Gabriel wore a perfectly tailored suit and his most charming smile. Her mother looked politely interested, but not convinced. Naomi. Gabriel stood as she approached. Perfect timing. Gabriel. She didn't sit down. What brings you by? I wanted to discuss this unfortunate situation, the photos, the gossip. His voice carried just the right amount of concern. I know you're upset about my proposal. Maybe you felt pressured to act out. Act out? Naomi's voice stayed level, but Evan would have recognized the warning tone. This thing with the driver, I understand the appeal of a little rebellion, but you're too smart to let it go too far. Marjorie's eyebrows rose slightly. She set down her teacup with deliberate precision. Gabriel, she said pleasantly, I think you may have misunderstood the situation. How so? My daughter doesn't act out. When Naomi makes a choice, she means it. Marjorie's smile was sharp as glass. Perhaps you didn't know her as well as you thought. Gabriel's charm flickered. Mrs. Ellison, surely you can't approve of this relationship. The difference in their backgrounds is none of your concern, Naomi interrupted. My personal life stopped being your business the moment I said no to your proposal. Naomi, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm being honest. Two things you seem to have trouble understanding. Gabriel's face flushed. You'll regret this, both of you. When the novelty wears off and you're left with nothing but gossip and scandal. That's enough. Marjorie stood gracefully. I think this conversation is over. Gabriel looked between them, clearly expecting support that wasn't coming. Finally, he nodded stiffly and walked away. Naomi sank into his abandoned chair. That went better than expected. Gabriel Layton is a weak man, Marjorie said, settling back into her seat. Weak men don't handle rejection well. Are you defending Evan? I'm defending your right to make your own mistakes. Marjorie poured fresh tea. Though I'm beginning to think Evan Rourke might not be one of them. Sunday dinner at Evan and Tessa's apartment was a revelation. The building was old but clean, with narrow hallways and thin walls. Their apartment was small, a living room, tiny kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. But it felt like home in a way that Naomi's grand townhouse never had. Tessa had hung plants in the windows and filled the walls with photos. Evan working on his car, Tessa at her nursing school graduation, the two of them at various holidays, always laughing. Sorry about the size, Evan said, helping Naomi out of her coat. It's not much, but it's ours. It's perfect, she said honestly. Dinner was indeed spaghetti with Tessa's homemade sauce, served at a small table that barely fit 3 people. They ate by candlelight because one of the overhead bulbs had burned out and no one had bothered to replace it. Naomi loved every minute. So, Tessa said, twirling pasta around her fork, what's the plan? You two can't hide in small apartments forever. We're not hiding, Evan said. Good, because Naomi's world is going to test you, both of you. What do you mean? Naomi asked. Tessa looked at her seriously. You're brave enough to choose him, but are you brave enough to keep choosing him when things get hard? When the gossip gets mean? When your mother's friends start whispering? Yes, Naomi said without hesitation. And you, Tessa turned to her brother, are you strong enough to let her fight for you? To accept that sometimes love comes with complications you can't control? Evan reached for Naomi's hand across the table. I'm learning. After dinner, they did dishes together in the tiny kitchen. Naomi washed, Evan dried, and Tessa put away. It was ordinary and domestic and perfect. I should go, Naomi said finally. Early morning tomorrow. Evan walked her down to her car. The evening was warm, full of the sounds of the neighborhood settling in for the night. Thank you, she said. For tonight. For letting me in. Thank you for wanting in. He kissed her goodbye, soft and lingering. When they broke apart, she noticed a man across the street taking pictures with a long lens camera. We're being watched, she murmured. Evan's jaw tightened. Want me to go talk to him? No, let him take pictures. I'm not ashamed of being here. The photographer snapped a few more shots, then disappeared into the shadows. It's going to get worse before it gets better, Evan said. I know, Naomi touched his face gently. Are you ready for that? Are you? Instead of answering, she kissed him again, longer this time, deeper. Let the photographer get that shot, too. I'll take that as a yes, Evan said when they broke apart. Monday brought the photos Naomi had been expecting. The headline read, Heiress slums it in driver's tenement. The pictures showed her arriving at Evan's building, eating dinner by candlelight, kissing him on the street. The article described the apartment as modest and working class, making it sound like she was visiting a foreign country. But there was something else. A smaller photo in the corner showing Gabriel Layton sitting in his car across the street from Evan's building. Her blood ran cold. She called Evan immediately. "Did you see it?" she asked. "Yeah, the pictures are actually kind of nice." "Evan, Gabriel was there, watching us." A pause. "You sure?" "There's a photo of him in his car. He orchestrated this whole thing." "Why?" "Because he can't stand losing, and because he knows exactly which pressure points to hit." Naomi felt sick. This isn't just gossip anymore. He's making it personal. "What do you want to do?" "I want to confront him, but first I need to talk to my mother." Marjorie was in her study when Naomi found her, reading the morning papers with her usual calm expression. She looked up as Naomi entered. "I see Gabriel is still making himself useful," Marjorie said dryly, gesturing to the gossip page. "You saw. Hard to miss. He's not being very subtle, is he?" Naomi sat across from her mother's desk. "What do I do?" "What do you want to do?" "Fight, but smartly." Marjorie smiled, the first genuine smile Naomi had seen from her in days. "Now you're thinking like your father's daughter." "What do you mean?" "Your father never backed down from a fight, but he always chose his battles carefully. He'd say, 'Don't get mad, get strategic.'" Marjorie closed the paper. "Gabriel's counting on you to lose your temper, to make this about emotion instead of truth." "So what's the strategic move?" "You live your life, openly, honestly, without apology. You let people see who Evan really is instead of who Gabriel wants them to think he is." Marjorie stood and walked around the desk. "And you trust that character will win out over gossip, eventually." "Will it?" Marjorie hugged her daughter for the first time in weeks. "Your father always said that good people recognize other good people. Have a little faith." That evening, Naomi made a decision. She called Evan and asked him to meet her at the ferry terminal. Not for a romantic sunset cruise, but for something more important. They found seats on the upper deck as the ferry pulled away from the dock. The city lights began to twinkle in the growing dusk. Other passengers chatted quietly or took photos, but no one paid them much attention. "What are we doing here?" Evan asked. "Proving a point." Naomi pulled out her phone and opened her social media app. "I've never posted anything personal before, just charity events and family foundations, professional stuff." She held up the phone to take a selfie. In the background, the city sparkled like stars. Evan looked surprised but didn't pull away. "Smile," she said. The photo was simple and sweet. Two people enjoying an evening ferry ride, Naomi's head on Evan's shoulder, both of them looking genuinely happy. She typed a caption. "Perfect evening on the harbor ferry. Some moments are worth sharing." "You sure about this?" Evan asked as she prepared to hit post. "Completely." She published the photo and put her phone away. "No explanation? No context?" Evan asked. "None needed. We're not doing anything wrong. We're just two people who care about each other, enjoying a beautiful evening." She leaned against him as the ferry rounded the harbor point. "Let them make it into something ugly if they want. We know what's real." Her phone started buzzing almost immediately with notifications, but she ignored it. Instead, she watched the city lights reflect on the water and felt Evan's arm tighten around her shoulders. They rode the ferry for 2 full loops around the harbor. By the time they docked, Naomi's post had hundreds of comments, some supportive, some critical, but she didn't care. She'd stopped hiding. "What happens now?" Evan asked as they walked back to the parking area. "Now we see if love is stronger than gossip." "And if it's not?" Naomi stopped walking and turned to face him. The ferry terminal lights cast long shadows across the dock, but his eyes were clear and steady. "Then we make it stronger," she said. "Together." He kissed her right there on the dock, with people walking past and car horns honking in the distance. When they broke apart, she saw a photographer across the parking lot taking pictures. This time, she waved. The next week brought unexpected support. Mr. Pike stopped by Naomi's morning coffee with news from the household staff. Several of the longtime employees had started pushing back against the gossip. Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, had been particularly vocal in defending Evan's character. 23 years I've worked in this house," she'd apparently told the newer staff. "I've seen plenty of young men chase Miss Naomi for her money. That boy never looked at her twice until she started treating him like a person instead of furniture." Even more surprising, donations to the family foundation had actually increased. Apparently, some people liked seeing Naomi as more human and less untouchable. Maybe your mother was right, Evan said when Naomi told him about it over lunch at Hart's Diner. Maybe good people really do recognize other good people. Speaking of my mother, Naomi said, she wants to have tea with you. Evan nearly choked on his coffee. What? This Thursday, 4 o'clock. Nothing formal, just tea in the garden. That sounds terrifying. It is terrifying, but it's also progress. Evan set down his cup and looked at her seriously. What if she doesn't like me? She already likes you. This is about her getting to know you. Naomi reached across the table. Besides, you survived dinner with Tessa interrogating you about your intentions. My mother will be easy after that. Your sister threatened to use her nursing skills to cause me pain if I hurt you. My mother would just have you fired. That's not reassuring. But he was smiling as he said it. Thursday afternoon found Evan standing in the Ellison garden, wearing his best dress shirt and fighting nerves. The garden was beautiful. Roses and lavender, stone paths and a small fountain, the kind of place that belonged in magazines. Marjorie appeared precisely at 4 o'clock, carrying a silver tea service on a tray. She wore cream-colored dress and pearls, looking every inch the society matron. Evan, she said warmly, thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me, Mrs. Ellison. They sat at the wrought iron table where Gabriel had made his unsuccessful plea the week before. Marjorie poured tea with practiced grace. Milk? Sugar? Just black, please. She handed him the delicate china cup and saucer. He accepted it carefully, aware that one wrong move could shatter something that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Tell me about your father, Marjorie said without preamble. Ma'am? Robert Morrison spoke very highly of him. I'd like to hear your perspective. Evan set down his teacup, gathering his thoughts. He was the strongest man I knew. Worked construction for 25 years, never missed a day unless he was in the hospital. When my mom died, he raised Tessa and me on his own, taught us that your word is your bond, and that everyone deserves respect, no matter what they do for a living. Sounds like a good man. The best. And he raised a good son. Marjorie's voice was quiet. Robert told me what you did when your father got sick, how you took a second job to help with medical bills, how you made sure Tessa could finish high school instead of dropping out to work. Evan shifted uncomfortably. Family takes care of family. Indeed, Marjorie refilled his cup. What are your intentions regarding my daughter? There it was, the question he'd been dreading. I love her, he said simply. I want to build a life with her if she'll have me. That's a pretty sentiment. But love and compatibility aren't always the same thing. No, ma'am, they're not. But Naomi and I, we talk about real things. We want the same kind of life. Simple, honest. We make each other laugh. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I know I can't give her the kind of luxury she's used to, but I can give her something Gabriel Layton never could. Which is? Someone who loves her for exactly who she is, not who she represents, or what she can do for my reputation. Evan met her eyes steadily. I see Naomi, Mrs. Ellison, not just the Ellison heiress, just Naomi. Marjorie was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. My husband used to say that the measure of a man isn't what he has, but what he does with what he's given. She set down her teacup. You were given very little, Evan Rourke, but you've done well with it. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet. I'm still not convinced this is wise, she stood gracefully, but I'm no longer convinced it's foolish either. As Evan prepared to leave, Marjorie touched his arm gently. Take care of her, Evan. She's stronger than she looks, but she's also more fragile than she pretends. Yes, ma'am, I will. Walking back to his car, Evan felt like he'd just survived the world's most polite interrogation, but he'd also felt something else. Acceptance, not complete, not unconditional, but the beginning of respect. It was more than he'd dared to hope for. That weekend, Gabriel made his final play. Naomi found the envelope slipped under her bedroom door Saturday morning. Inside was a printed email and a note in Gabriel's handwriting. The email was from a private investigator detailing Evan's financial situation, his modest savings account, his student loans from community college, the second mortgage he'd taken on his father's old house to pay for medical bills. Gabriel's note was short. Ask yourself why a man with this much debt is so interested in a woman with your resources. Some people call it love, others call it a long-term investment. Naomi stared at the papers for a full 5 minutes before she started to laugh. She was still laughing when she called Evan. "What's so funny?" he asked. "Gabriel just sent me a financial report on you." Dead silence. Then, "He what?" "Complete breakdown of your debts and assets. I guess he thought it would scare me off." She laughed again. "He has no idea how romantic I find fiscal responsibility. Naomi, you took a second mortgage to pay for your father's cancer treatment. Did you think I wouldn't find that admirable?" "I thought you might find it limiting." "The only thing I find limiting is people who assume money is more important than character." Her voice softened. "Gabriel thinks he's found your weakness. He doesn't understand that taking care of your family is actually your greatest strength." "What are you going to do with the report?" Naomi looked at Gabriel's note again, with its smug assumptions and nasty implications. "I'm going to frame it," she said, "right next to that photo of us on the ferry, a reminder that some people see love as an investment and others see it as a gift." "I love you," Evan said quietly. "I love you too. And Gabriel Layton can go straight to hell." But even as she said it, Naomi knew Gabriel's attack was just the beginning. If he was willing to hire private investigators, there was no telling what else he might do. The real test was yet to come. Monday morning brought news that changed everything. Naomi was having breakfast when Mr. Pike appeared in the dining room doorway, his usually calm face tight with concern. "Miss Naomi, could I have a word?" She followed him to his office, where he closed the door and gestured for her to sit. "There's been a development," he said carefully. "Someone leaked security footage to the press, the full garage video from the night of your kiss." Naomi's stomach dropped. How much did they see? Everything. You entering the garage, Evan working on the car, Gabriel calling your name, the kiss itself. Mr. Pike's voice was gentle but firm. But also something else. "The full video shows Evan hesitating before he responded to your kiss. It's clear you initiated it." "That's good, right? It proves he wasn't taking advantage." "For anyone paying attention, yes. But the headline isn't focusing on that part." He handed her his tablet. The gossip site's story was titled, "Full Garage Tape. Heiress Throws Herself at Shocked Driver." Below it, a series of still frames showed the kiss from multiple angles. "Oh, God," Naomi sank into a chair. Evan must be mortified. "There's more." Mr. Pike's expression grew even more serious. "The leak came from Gabriel Layton. We have digital fingerprints proving he accessed the system Friday night using stolen credentials." "He can do that." "His mother serves on the museum board with your mother. She had legitimate access codes for coordinating security during events. Gabriel borrowed them." Naomi felt fury rise in her chest. That sneaky, manipulative, indeed. Mr. Pike allowed himself a small smile. "However, his theft of private security footage is quite illegal. If you choose to press charges—" "No," Naomi stood abruptly. "No lawyers, no charges. That just makes this bigger. I need to talk to Evan." "He's not answering his phone. Tessa called looking for him an hour ago." Naomi's heart clenched. "He's hiding. Or protecting himself. The comments on that article are unkind. She didn't need to read them to know. People would be calling Evan weak, saying he was trapped by a rich woman's attention, making jokes about his masculinity and her desperation. I have to find him." Evan wasn't at his apartment. His Mustang was gone from its usual parking spot. Naomi drove through the city, checking places she thought he might go. The garage where he'd worked before joining the Ellison staff. The hospital where Tessa worked, even Hart's diner. Nothing. Finally, she remembered something he'd mentioned about helping his father restore the old car, about weekend trips to a salvage yard outside the city where they'd hunt for parts. She found the Mustang parked behind Rourke's Auto Salvage 40 minutes later. The yard was exactly what she'd expected, rows of old cars in various states of decay, rusted hoods and broken windshields glinting in the afternoon sun. She followed the sound of hammering to a small garage bay where Evan worked on something under the hood of a beat-up Chevy. He looked up when she approached, oil streaked across his forehead. "Naomi," his voice was flat, "you shouldn't be here." "Why, because it's beneath me?" She stepped into the garage, noting the simple tools hung neatly on pegboard walls. "Or because you're ashamed of me finding you here?" Because every minute you spend with me makes this worse for you. The video? He wiped his hands on a rag, not meeting her eyes. Did you see the comments? I don't care about the comments. Well, I do. Evan's voice rose slightly. They're calling you desperate, saying you threw yourself at the hired help because no real man would have you. And you believe that? I believe that kissing you that night was the best and worst thing that ever happened to me. He finally looked at her. Best because I got to know what it felt like to be chosen by someone like you. Worst, because now everyone thinks you had to trap me into it. Naomi stepped closer. Evan Rourke, you are the most stubborn, prideful man I have ever met. Probably. Do you think I care what strangers on the internet say about my love life? You should. These people move in your world. They'll remember this at every charity gala, every museum opening, every place you need to be taken seriously. Then I'll make new places. She reached for his hands, dirty though they were. I'll make a world where being loved by Evan Rourke is considered the greatest honor a woman could have. His resistance cracked just a little. Naomi, I meant what I said that night. I'm not sorry I kissed you. I'm sorry it took me so long. For a moment, she thought he might pull her into his arms. Instead, he stepped back. Your mother called me this morning. Naomi's blood chilled. What did she say? That she's worried about you, about the pressure this is putting on the family foundation, about how this affects your future. He picked up a wrench and set it down again. She offered me a generous severance package, enough to pay off my loans and set Tessa up for the rest of nursing school. Please tell me you didn't take it. I told her I needed time to think. Evan, maybe she's right, Naomi. Maybe I'm being selfish, letting you throw your life away on someone who can't give you what you deserve. Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. What I deserve is someone who loves me, someone who makes me laugh and challenges me and sees me as more than just a trust fund with legs. And when the gossip gets tired of us, when they move on to the next scandal, what happens when you wake up in my small apartment with my second-hand furniture and realize you gave up a palace for a shack? Then I'll thank God every day for being smart enough to choose love over comfort. She moved closer, forcing him to look at her. My father left me more than money, Evan. He left me the knowledge that character matters more than social standing, that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account. Easy to say when you've never lived without money? You're right. I don't know what it's like to worry about rent or medical bills or whether I can afford groceries. But I know what it's like to live in a world where everyone wants something from you, where every friendship comes with conditions and every relationship has strings attached. She touched his face gently. Until you. Evan closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. This is so much harder than I thought it would be. Love is hard, but it's also worth fighting for. What if I can't be what you need? What if you already are? Before he could answer, her phone rang. Tessa's name flashed on the screen. Answer it, Evan said. She's been worried. Naomi? Tessa's voice was urgent. Is Evan with you? Yes. What's wrong? You need to get to the hospital. Now. Mrs. Chen, the Ellisons' head housekeeper, had collapsed while organizing the linen closet. Heart attack. She was stable now, but asking for Evan specifically. Naomi and Evan arrived at the cardiac unit to find Mrs. Chen propped up in bed, looking smaller than usual, but alert. Her family surrounded her husband, 2 grown daughters, and a handful of grandchildren. Evan, she said weakly as they approached. Come here, boy. He moved to her bedside, taking her offered hand. 23 years I work for that family, she said, her accent thicker due to medication and exhaustion. I see many young men chase Miss Naomi. Gold diggers, all of them. Pretty words, fancy gifts, but looking at her like she's a bank account. Mrs. Chen, you listen to me. Her grip tightened. You never looked at that girl until she started talking to you like a human being, never asked for anything, never pushed for attention. She glanced at Naomi. This one, she brings you coffee when you work late, remembers your birthday, asks about your sister. Mrs. Chen's oldest daughter stepped forward. Mama, you need to rest. I rest when I'm done talking. Mrs. Chen fixed Evan with a stern look. You think money makes you unworthy? Money is just paper. Character is what matters. You have good character, Evan Rourke. Don't let proud fools tell you different. She released his hand and patted the bed for Naomi to sit. And you, Miss Naomi, Your father, he would be proud. He married for love too, you know, against his family's wishes. No, Naomi said softly. Good love is rare. Grab it with both hands when you find it. Mrs. Chen's eyes began to flutter with exhaustion. Don't let other people's fear steal your happiness. As Mrs. Chen drifted off to sleep, her husband approached them. She's right, you know, he said quietly. About young Evan here. My wife, she has good eyes for people. 46 years married, and she's never been wrong about character. Outside the hospital, Naomi and Evan walked slowly toward the parking garage. She's amazing, Naomi said. She's been like a grandmother to me since I started working for your family, always slipping me extra food, asking about Tessa's grades. She loves you. Yeah, and she loves you too. Evan stopped walking. Naomi, about what your mother offered. You're not taking it. It wasn't a question. No, I'm not. But not because of Mrs. Chen or guilt or anything like that. Then why? Because I realized something in that salvage yard. I've been so worried about what I can't give you that I forgot about what I can. He turned to face her fully. I can give you honesty, loyalty, someone who will love you when you're sick and cranky and wearing sweatpants, someone who will fight for you even when you're not sure you want to fight for yourself. Evan, I can give you Sunday morning pancakes and ferry rides and someone to talk to when you can't sleep. I can give you a man who will never ever take your love for granted. Naomi felt tears slide down her cheeks. That sounds perfect. It won't be perfect. I'll probably mess up. Say the wrong thing at important dinners, not understand some social rule that everyone else takes for granted. And I'll probably have moments where I don't understand why the electric bill matters or forget that not everyone can afford to be spontaneous. She smiled through her tears. We'll figure it out together. Together, he agreed, and kissed her in the hospital parking garage as ambulances wailed in the distance and ordinary people lived their ordinary lives around them. But their peace didn't last long. Wednesday morning brought a new crisis that neither of them saw coming. Naomi arrived at the townhouse to find her mother pacing the library, dressed in a severe black suit and holding a legal document. Sit down, Marjorie said without preamble. What's wrong? Gabriel has filed a harassment claim with the police. He's alleging that you and Evan have been stalking him, damaging his property and threatening his safety. Naomi's mouth dropped open. That's insane. Is it? Can you account for Evan's whereabouts Sunday evening between 8 and 10 p.m.? He was with me. We had dinner at his apartment, then went for a walk by the harbor. Naomi's mind raced. Why Sunday specifically? Because someone slashed Gabriel's tires and spray-painted liar across his car windshield Sunday night in his private parking garage. And he thinks Evan did it. He's claiming Evan has been increasingly aggressive since the video leak, making threatening phone calls, following him. Marjorie set down the legal papers. It's complete fabrication, but it's also clever. If this goes to court, it paints Evan as an unstable, violent man who can't control his jealousy. Naomi felt cold dread settle in her stomach. Can Gabriel prove any of this? He doesn't need to prove it, he just needs to make it public. Heiress's boyfriend stalks rejected suitor makes for excellent headlines. We fight it. We prove he's lying. With what? Evan's word against Gabriel's? A rich man's accusation against a working-class driver? Marjorie's voice was gentle but firm. Naomi, Gabriel has 3 witnesses who will swear they saw Evan in Gabriel's neighborhood Sunday night. Paid witnesses? Probably, but proving that in court would take months. In the meantime, the story dominates every gossip page in the city. Naomi sank into a chair, suddenly understanding the full scope of Gabriel's plan. He wasn't just trying to break up her relationship, he was trying to destroy Evan's reputation completely. There's more, Marjorie said quietly. Gabriel's mother called this morning. She's threatening to pull the Layton Family Foundation's support from the museum project unless we address the situation appropriately. How much support? $2 million, plus their influence with 5 other major donors. The museum project was Naomi's pride and joy, a new children's education wing that would serve underprivileged kids throughout the city. She'd been working on it for 3 years. He's not just coming after Evan, she realized. He's coming after everything I care about. Yes, But there's a way out? Naomi looked up sharply. What do you mean? Marjorie pulled out another document. A prepared statement. It says that you and Evan had a brief infatuation that has since ended, that he will no longer be employed by our family, and that you're grateful for Gabriel's patience during this difficult time. You want me to lie? I want you to be practical. Gabriel gets his public victory. The harassment claims disappear, the museum funding continues, and you move on with your life. What about Evan? He gets a generous severance package and excellent references. He'll find another position easily. Naomi stared at the statement, feeling trapped. And if I don't sign it? Then Gabriel pushes forward with his harassment claims. Even if Evan is eventually cleared, the damage will be done. No reputable family will hire him. His sister's nursing school loans become impossible to manage, and the museum project dies. You're asking me to choose between the man I love and the work I've dedicated my life to. I'm asking you to be realistic about the cost of defying powerful people. Naomi stood abruptly. I need to talk to Evan. Naomi, I need to tell him what Gabriel's planning. He deserves to. No, but as she reached for the door handle, her phone rang. Tessa's number. Naomi, thank God. Tessa's voice was panicked. Evan's been arrested. The police station smelled like disinfectant and despair. Naomi sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, waiting for news. Gabriel's harassment complaint had been filed that morning, complete with photographic evidence of his vandalized car and sworn statements from 3 witnesses. Tessa paced nearby, still wearing her hospital scrubs from her rushed trip across town. This is insane, Tessa muttered. Evan was with us Sunday night. We watched a movie and played cards until almost midnight. Did you tell the police? Of course, but they said family testimony doesn't count for much. We could be lying to protect him. A detective appeared, a tired-looking woman in her 40s with kind eyes and graying hair. Miss Ellison, I'm Detective Rodriguez. Could I speak with you privately? They found a small conference room down the hall. Detective Rodriguez closed the door and pulled out a notebook. I need to ask about your relationship with Evan Rourke. He's my boyfriend. We've been dating for several weeks. And how would you describe his temperament? Ever seen him lose his temper? Get violent? Never. Evan is the calmest, most controlled person I know. Naomi leaned forward. Detective, this complaint is false. Gabriel Layton is filing it because I rejected his marriage proposal. That's a serious accusation. It's also true. Gabriel has been systematically trying to destroy my relationship with Evan. He hired private investigators. He stole security footage from my family's home. He's been escalating for weeks. Detective Rodriguez made notes. Can you prove any of this? Some of it. The stolen footage, definitely. The private investigation, too. Gabriel sent me the results. What about Sunday night specifically? Can you account for Mr. Rourke's whereabouts? He was with me until around 9:30. Then he went home to his sister. Any witnesses to your time together? Naomi thought desperately. We had dinner at a small restaurant on 5th Street, Giuseppe's. The owner might remember us. I'll check. In the meantime, Mr. Rourke is being released on his own recognizance, but he can't have any contact with Gabriel Layton until this is resolved. How long will that take? Depends. If Mr. Layton's willing to drop the charges, this goes away quickly. Otherwise, it could take months to sort out. Evan emerged from the holding area looking exhausted and angry. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair messed up from running his hands through it. Are you okay? Naomi asked, rushing to him. I've been better. He hugged her briefly, then pulled back. Naomi, this is bad. Really bad. I know, but we'll fight it. We'll prove Gabriel is lying. With what? He's got witnesses saying they saw me near his building Sunday night. Professional witnesses who won't crack under questioning. Tessa joined them, car keys in hand. Let's get out of here first. We can figure out next steps at home. But as they walked toward the exit, Naomi spotted a familiar figure by the information desk. Gabriel Layton stood talking to a reporter, his expression perfectly crafted to show concern and regret. Hate to see her manipulated this way, Gabriel was saying. I just hope she realizes what kind of man she's defending before someone gets seriously hurt. Evan started toward Gabriel, but Naomi caught his arm. Don't. That's exactly what he wants. Gabriel noticed them and offered a sad smile. Naomi, I'm so sorry it came to this. No, you're not, she said calmly. But you will be. She pulled out her phone and opened her social media app. What are you doing? Tessa asked. Telling the truth. Naomi began typing rapidly. Gabriel Layton has filed false harassment charges against the man I love because I refused his marriage proposal. For weeks, Gabriel has stalked us, hired investigators, stolen private footage, and tried to destroy an innocent person's reputation. This ends now. Naomi, don't, Evan started. She hit send before he could stop her. There, she said, putting her phone away. Let's see how Gabriel's version holds up against the actual facts. Gabriel's perfectly composed expression finally cracked. You have no idea what you've just done. Yes, I do. I've chosen love over fear, and I'm about to choose truth over lies. She took Evan's hand and walked out of the police station, leaving Gabriel to explain to the reporter why the supposed victim was calling him a liar on social media. The next 24 hours were a whirlwind. Naomi's post went viral within hours. The comment section became a battlefield between Gabriel's supporters and people who smelled the stench of a powerful man abusing the system. Several prominent women shared stories of their own experiences with men who couldn't handle rejection gracefully. But more importantly, real evidence began to surface. A security guard at Gabriel's building came forward to say he'd been offered money to lie about seeing Evan Sunday night. A bartender at the restaurant where Naomi and Evan had dinner produced time-stamped receipts and security footage. Giuseppe himself remembered serving them, remembered how happy they'd seemed together. By Thursday morning, Gabriel's story was falling apart. Detective Rodriguez called Naomi with an update. Mr. Layton is withdrawing his complaint. Seems his witnesses developed sudden memory problems when we threatened perjury charges. So it's over? The criminal charges, yes, but he could still pursue a civil harassment claim if he wanted. He won't, Naomi said confidently. He's too smart to keep digging when the hole is already this deep. She was right. By afternoon, Gabriel's lawyer had issued a statement saying the complaint had been based on mistaken identity and that Gabriel apologized for any confusion. But the damage to Gabriel's reputation was already done. The story became less about Naomi's controversial romance and more about a wealthy man's attempt to weaponize the legal system out of spite. Editorial writers had a field day discussing privilege, power, and the dangers of false accusations. Gabriel's mother called to withdraw the Layton Foundation's threats against the museum project, probably realizing that association with the scandal could hurt their own reputation. It was, Naomi reflected, a masterclass in how quickly public opinion could turn when people smelled injustice. Friday evening found Naomi and Evan back on the ferry, watching the city lights reflect on the harbor water. It had been exactly 2 weeks since their first public coffee date, though it felt like a lifetime. So, Evan said, leaning against the deck railing, what happens now? Now we figure out what normal looks like. Naomi took his hand, whatever that means for us. I'm thinking normal might include me finding a new job. Working for your mother after all this feels complicated. Actually, Mr. Pike offered you a position with the family's property management company. Same pay, better hours, and you wouldn't be technically working for us anymore. You talked to him? I talked to everyone, including my mother. Naomi smiled. She said something interesting yesterday. She said watching you handle the arrest with dignity reminded her of my father, that he would have respected you. That means a lot coming from her. It means everything coming from her. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, watching other couples and families enjoying the evening cruise. Normal people living normal lives, unbothered by gossip or social expectations. Naomi? Evan said as the ferry prepared to dock. Yeah? I love you. Whatever normal looks like, I want to figure it out with you. Even if normal includes charity galas and museum openings and my mother's friends asking you inappropriate questions about your intentions? Even then, as long as it also includes Sunday morning coffee and ferry rides and you falling asleep on my couch during movies. Deal, she said, and kissed him as the ferry horn sounded across the harbor. They were just two people in love, heading home together. The gossip would die down eventually. Gabriel would find new targets for his attention. The world would move on to the next scandal. But love, real love, honest love, love built on character and trust and choosing each other every single day, that would last. As they walked off the ferry together, Naomi's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Dinner Sunday? I'm making pot roast. Evan is welcome." She showed him the message. "Your mother's pot roast?" Evan grinned. "Now I know this is serious." "As serious as it gets," Naomi confirmed. And for the first time in weeks, that felt exactly right. 3 weeks. Later, life had settled into something Naomi had never experienced before. Ordinary happiness. The gossip pages had moved on to fresher scandals. Gabriel had quietly left the city for an extended stay at his family's place in the Hamptons. The harassment charges were officially dropped, and Evan had started his new position with the Ellison Property Management Company. Most importantly, Sunday dinner at Marjorie's had become a regular tradition. "Pass the potatoes, please," Tessa said, reaching across the dining room table that had been set for 4 instead of the usual formal 12. "These are amazing, Mrs. Ellison," Evan added, accepting the bowl from Naomi's mother. "My compliments to the chef." "I'll tell Mrs. Rodriguez you said so," Marjorie replied with a slight smile, "though I did supervise the roast myself." Naomi watched her mother and Evan navigate their still developing relationship with careful politeness. It wasn't warm yet, but it was genuine. Marjorie had stopped seeing Evan as a threat to her daughter's future and started seeing him as a person who made Naomi laugh at breakfast. "How's the museum project coming along?" Tessa asked, cutting into her pot roast. "Better than ever, actually," Naomi said. "The publicity from Gabriel's situation brought in some unexpected donors, people who said they wanted to support a foundation that stood up for character over politics." "That's wonderful," Evan said. "When's the groundbreaking?" "Next month, and I was hoping—" Naomi glanced at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. "I was hoping you'd all be there. It's going to be a small ceremony, but it means everything to me." "We wouldn't miss it," Tessa said immediately. Evan reached over and squeezed Naomi's hand. "Count me in." "And me," Marjorie added quietly, "though I reserve the right to make suggestions about your speech." "Deal," Naomi laughed. After dinner, they moved to the garden for coffee and Marjorie's famous lemon cake. The evening was warm, with the kind of golden light that made everything look painted. Tessa regaled them with stories from the hospital, while Marjorie shared updates on various foundation projects. It was, Naomi realized, exactly what she'd always wanted family dinner to feel like. "I should head home," Tessa said finally, checking her phone. "Early shift tomorrow." "I'll drive you," Evan offered, but Tessa waved him off. "I've got my car. Besides, I think you have other plans tonight." She winked at Naomi. "Something about a sunset ferry ride?" "How did you—" Naomi started. "He's been checking ferry schedules all week. Very subtle, my brother." Tessa kissed Evan's cheek and hugged Naomi goodbye. "See you next Sunday, Mrs. Ellison. Thank you for dinner." "Drive safely, dear," Marjorie said warmly. After Tessa left, Marjorie began clearing the coffee cups with practiced efficiency. "Mom, let me help," Naomi started. "Nonsense. You two go catch your ferry. The dishes will keep." But as Naomi and Evan prepared to leave, Marjorie touched Evan's arm gently. "A word?" she said. Evan glanced at Naomi, who shrugged. "I'll wait by the car." When they were alone, Marjorie studied Evan's face with the intensity she usually reserved for reviewing foundation budgets. "I owe you an apology," she said finally. "Mrs. Ellison, when this all started, I saw you as a complication, something that would disrupt our life and hurt Naomi in the long run." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I was protecting the wrong thing." "What do you mean?" "I was so focused on protecting her from gossip and social pressure that I almost cost her the one thing that actually matters." "Happiness." Marjorie's voice grew soft. "She lights up when you walk into a room, Evan. I haven't seen her this genuinely happy since she was a child." "She makes me happy too," he said simply. "I know, and that's what convinced me." Marjorie straightened, returning to her usual composed posture. "When this Gabriel business happened, you could have walked away, saved yourself the trouble. But you stayed and fought for her." "Of course I did." "Not of course. Plenty of men would have decided she wasn't worth the complications." Marjorie smiled, the first completely genuine smile she'd given him. "My husband used to say that you don't really know someone until you see how they handle a crisis. You handled yours with grace." "Thank you, ma'am. That means more than you know." "Good, because I have something for you." She pulled a small box from her pocket. This was my husband's, a simple gold band that he wore every day for 28 years. Evan stared at the box but didn't take it. Mrs. Ellison, it's not a suggestion, she said gently. It's not even permission, really. Naomi is perfectly capable of making her own decisions. It's just a gift from one person who loved her to another. Evan accepted the box with trembling hands. Inside was indeed a simple gold band, worn smooth with years of wear. He would have liked you, Marjorie continued. You have the same quiet strength he did, the same way of putting family first. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take care of my daughter, not because she needs taking care of, but because that's what people do when they love each other. Yes, ma'am, I will. Marjorie nodded once, briskly, as if concluding a business transaction. Good. Now go catch that ferry before Naomi starts honking the horn. The evening ferry was less crowded than usual, mostly couples and tourists enjoying the golden hour light. Naomi and Evan found seats on the upper deck, watching the city skyline grow smaller as they headed into the harbor. Everything okay with my mother? Naomi asked, noting Evan's slightly dazed expression. Yeah, more than okay. He patted his jacket pocket where her father's ring was safely stored. She's something. She's a force of nature. But she means, well, I'm starting to figure that out. They settled into comfortable silence, watching seagulls dive for fish in the ferry's wake. Other passengers chatted quietly or took photos, but Naomi barely noticed them. Her world had narrowed to this: Evan's hand in hers, the warm evening breeze, and the feeling that everything was exactly as it should be. Naomi, Evan said as the ferry reached the halfway point of its circuit. I need to ask you something. Something in his tone made her turn to face him fully. His expression was serious but not worried, nervous but excited. What is it? Instead of answering, he stood up and moved to the deck railing. Come here. She followed, curious. The setting sun painted the water gold and orange, and the city lights were just beginning to twinkle in the distance. 3 months ago, I was just a driver, Evan said, not looking away from her face. I went to work, did my job, went home. I had a good life, but it was small. Safe. Predictable. Evan, then you kissed me in a garage and everything changed. He smiled. Suddenly I was living in color instead of black and white. You showed me what it felt like to be seen. Really seen. Not just as the help or the working guy or someone's little brother. You saw me as someone worth choosing. Naomi's eyes began to fill with tears. You are worth choosing. And you're worth fighting for, worth standing up to gossip columnists and false accusations and all the complications that come with loving someone from a different world. Evan reached into his jacket pocket. Which brings me to my question. He pulled out a small velvet box, but not the one Marjorie had given him. This one was newer, smaller, clearly bought with his own carefully saved money. Oh my God, Naomi whispered. I know this isn't the fanciest ring. I know I can't give you diamonds the size of golf balls or propose on a yacht in the Mediterranean. Evan dropped to one knee right there on the ferry deck, completely oblivious to the other passengers who had started to notice. But I can give you my whole heart. I can give you someone who will love you in sickness and health, in scandal and quiet Sunday mornings, for as long as we both live. He opened the box to reveal a simple solitaire diamond, modest but beautiful, set in a classic gold band. Naomi Ellison, will you marry me? The ferry deck had gone completely quiet. Even the seagulls seemed to be holding their breath. Naomi looked down at Evan's face, at the hope and love and slight terror in his eyes, and felt her heart overflow with certainty. Yes, she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Yes, absolutely yes. The deck erupted in applause as Evan stood and slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He'd somehow gotten her size right. But before she could ask how, he was kissing her, lifting her off her feet as the ferry passengers cheered and the sun painted everything golden. When they broke apart, Naomi was crying and laughing at the same time. How did you know my ring size? She managed to ask. Tessa stole one of your rings when she came to dinner last week. Very sneaky, my sister. I love your sneaky sister. I love your whole family. She looked down at the ring, simple and perfect on her finger. I love you. I love you too. More than ferry rides and Sunday dinners and all the ordinary miracles I never knew I wanted. An elderly woman sitting nearby dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. That's the most romantic thing I've ever seen, she announced to no one in particular. Evan and Naomi laughed, suddenly aware they had an audience. Thank you, Naomi called to the other passengers. Sorry for making you all part of our moment. Don't apologize, a man called back. That was better than dinner theater. As the ferry began its return journey to the dock, Evan and Naomi found a quiet corner to call their families. Tessa screamed so loudly that several people turned to stare. Marjorie's response was more controlled but no less warm. I'm very happy for you both, she said when Naomi put her on speaker. When were you thinking about the wedding? We just got engaged 5 minutes ago, Mom. I'm just saying, spring is lovely for weddings. Not too hot, not too cold. Perfect for garden ceremonies. Evan grinned. Your mother doesn't waste time. My mother has been planning my wedding since I was 12. She probably already has 3 backup venues picked out. 4, Marjorie corrected cheerfully. But who's counting? 2 months later, on a perfect October morning, they broke ground on the new Children's Education Wing at the City Museum. Naomi stood at the small podium that had been set up at the construction site, looking out at the crowd of donors, city officials, and curious onlookers. Her engagement ring caught the morning light as she adjusted the microphone. 5 years ago, my father told me that the best investment we can make is in the next generation, she began. He said that education doesn't just change individual lives, it changes entire communities. In the front row, Evan sat between Tessa and Marjorie, all 3 of them beaming with pride. Mr. Pike stood nearby with several other longtime family employees, including Mrs. Chen, who had made a full recovery from her heart attack. This building represents more than just classrooms and exhibits. It represents the belief that every child deserves access to learning, regardless of their background or their family's financial situation. Naomi's voice grew stronger as she continued. My father also taught me that the most important thing in life is having people who believe in you, people who see your potential even when you can't see it yourself. She looked directly at Evan, her smile radiant. The people who made this project possible understand that lesson. They know that investing in children isn't just about money. It's about love, about hope, about the faith that tomorrow can be better than today if we're willing to work for it. The speech continued for another few minutes, but Evan barely heard the rest. He was too busy watching the woman he loved share her passion with the world, too busy feeling grateful that somehow, against all odds, she had chosen him. After the ceremonial groundbreaking, they walked through the existing museum together. Naomi pointed out where the new classrooms would go, how the interactive exhibits would work, what the outdoor learning space would look like. It's going to be amazing, Evan said, squeezing her hand. It's going to change lives, she corrected. That's what matters. As they prepared to leave, Mr. Pike approached with a manila envelope. Miss Naomi, this came for you this morning, hand-delivered. The envelope had no return address, just her name written in Gabriel's familiar handwriting. Naomi opened it warily, expecting some final nasty surprise. Instead, she found a simple card and a check. The card read, "For the museum project. Some apologies are better made through action than words. Congratulations on your engagement. GL." The check was for $50,000. Well, Evan said, reading over her shoulder, I guess even Gabriel Layton can learn from his mistakes. People can change, Naomi said, tucking the check into her purse, though I'm not holding my breath for a wedding invitation. Speaking of wedding invitations, Tessa appeared beside them, grinning. Please tell me you've set a date. Marjorie is driving me crazy with venue options. Spring, Naomi said. Definitely spring. And definitely in the garden at the townhouse. Thank God, Evan muttered. I was starting to think we'd have to elope to avoid the planning committees. The wedding planning, as it turned out, was surprisingly fun. Marjorie, despite her tendency to go overboard, genuinely listened to what Naomi and Evan wanted. The guest list stayed small. Family, close friends, longtime employees. The flowers were simple but elegant. The menu featured comfort food alongside the fancy canapes. It's perfect, Naomi said, reviewing the final plans over coffee in the garden where the ceremony would take place in 2 weeks. Everything I wanted, but didn't know how to ask for. Your father would have loved this, Marjorie said softly. He always said the best parties were the ones where everyone felt welcome. He would have loved Evan, too. Yes, I think he would have. Marjorie set down her coffee cup. Speaking of Evan, where is he this morning? Car trouble. His precious Mustang finally gave up the ghost, so he and Tessa are at the auto shop getting a diagnosis. That old car has been threatening to die since before you met him. I know. He's been putting off dealing with it because he couldn't afford the repairs. Naomi smiled. I offered to help, but you know how he is about accepting money. Pride can be expensive. So can love, but it's worth every penny. An hour later, Evan appeared in the garden looking grease-stained and slightly defeated. Bad news? Naomi asked, kissing his cheek. The worst. Engine rebuild would cost more than the car is worth. Tessa says I should just accept that it's time to let go. She's probably right. I know she is, but that car? It's all I have left of my dad, you know? Naomi's heart ached for him. She'd heard the stories about James Rourke and his son spending weekends under the hood of that old Mustang. How they'd celebrate every small victory, getting the engine to turn over, fixing the transmission, making the radio work. What if there was another way? She said carefully. What do you mean? What if instead of rebuilding the engine we restored the whole car, properly, with period-correct parts and professional help? Evan shook his head. Naomi, that would cost a fortune. So, it's my fortune. And soon it'll be our fortune. Can't I spend some of it on something that makes my future husband happy? It's not about the money. Yes, it is. It's about you thinking you don't deserve nice things. It's about you thinking accepting help makes you weak. Naomi took his hands, grease stains and all. Evan, love means letting people take care of you sometimes. It means sharing burdens and sharing joy. I just don't want you to think, I think you're a man who honors his father's memory by holding on to the things that matter. I think that car represents love and family and the kind of legacy worth preserving. She smiled. Besides, our kids are going to want to hear stories about their grandfather. What better way to tell those stories than by showing them the car he and their father built together? Evan's resistance crumbled. Our kids? Eventually, if you want them. I want everything with you. Kids, cars, Sunday dinners, ferry rides when we're 90 and arguing about whose turn it is to drive. Then let me give you this. Let me give us this. He kissed her then, long and sweet, right there in the garden where they'd be married in 2 weeks. Okay, he said when they broke apart, but I'm doing some of the work myself. It's not the same if I don't get my hands dirty. Deal. As long as you let the professionals handle the complicated stuff. Deal. Their wedding day dawned clear and perfect. Naomi woke in her childhood bedroom to the sound of birds singing in the garden and Tessa's voice in the hallway demanding coffee and chocolate croissants for the bride. This is it, she said to her reflection in the mirror, the day I marry Evan Rourke. Her wedding dress was simple but elegant, ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves, a style that would have been equally at home in a cathedral or a backyard. Her father's pearl necklace provided the something old. Her new engagement ring was the something new. Tessa had insisted on lending her a vintage hair clip that had belonged to their grandmother. And hidden beneath the elegant dress, she wore blue lace garters that had made Evan blush when she'd shown them to him the night before. Almost ready? Marjorie appeared in the doorway, stunning in a soft gray dress that brought out her silver hair. Almost. Just trying to take it all in. Cold feet? Hot feet. Burning feet. I can't wait to walk down that aisle and marry that man. Marjorie smiled. That's exactly how I felt on my wedding day. Like I couldn't get to the altar fast enough. Any last-minute motherly advice? Just this. Marriage isn't about finding someone you can live with. It's about finding someone you can't live without. Marjorie adjusted Naomi's veil with gentle hands. You chose well, darling. Your father would be so proud. The ceremony was perfect in its simplicity. White folding chairs arranged in neat rows in the garden, an arch of climbing roses where Naomi and Evan would exchange vows, string quartet music floating over the small gathering of people they loved most. Evan waited at the altar in a classic black tuxedo, looking nervous and happy and more handsome than should be legal. Tessa stood beside him as his best person, radiant in a soft blue dress. Mr. Pike, who was officiating the ceremony, smiled encouragingly. When the wedding march began, Naomi appeared at the garden entrance with her arm through Marjorie's. She'd chosen to have her mother walk her down the aisle, a decision that honored both their past and their future. But she only had eyes for Evan. He watched her approach with an expression of wonder, as if he couldn't quite believe this was really happening. When she reached the altar, Marjorie kissed her cheek and placed Naomi's hand in Evan's with a whispered, "Take care of each other." "Dearly beloved," Mr. Pike began, his usually formal voice warm with affection, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of two people who have shown us all what it means to choose love over convenience, character over status, and truth over fear." The vows they'd written themselves were simple and heartfelt. "Naomi," Evan said, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes, "you saw me when I was invisible. You chose me when I didn't think I was worth choosing. You fought for us when it would have been easier to walk away. I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift. I promise to love you in sunshine and storms, in everyday moments and extraordinary ones. I promise to be your partner, your best friend, and the man who makes you laugh when you most need it." "Evan," Naomi replied, her own voice thick with emotion, "you showed me what it feels like to be truly known and truly loved. You made me brave enough to choose happiness over expectations, real love over safe love. I promise to stand beside you through whatever challenges come our way. I promise to build a life with you that's filled with laughter and ferry rides and Sunday dinners and all the ordinary miracles that make love real." When Mr. Pike pronounced them husband and wife, Evan's kiss was gentle and reverent, like he was sealing a sacred promise. The small crowd erupted in applause, and somewhere in the distance, a ferry horn sounded across the harbor. The reception was held in the same garden, transformed with twinkling lights and round tables set with simple white linens and mason jars full of wildflowers, dancing under the stars to a small jazz band, surrounded by everyone they loved. Naomi's first dance with her new husband was to "The Way You Look Tonight," but her favorite moment came later when she danced with Mrs. Chen, who insisted that the bride needed to dance with all her family, blood or chosen. "You did good, Miss Naomi," Mrs. Chen said as they swayed to the music. "That boy will take care of you." "We'll take care of each other," Naomi corrected. "Even better." As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Naomi and Evan found themselves alone in the garden where it all started. She'd changed out of her wedding dress into a simple sundress, and he'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. "So," she said, settling into his arms as the last of the music faded, "how does it feel to be married to an heiress?" "Pretty amazing. How does it feel to be married to a simple working man?" "Like the best decision I ever made." They swayed together in comfortable silence, surrounded by the lingering scent of roses and the soft glow of fairy lights. "I have something for you," Evan said eventually. "Another something? You already gave me this beautiful ring and the most perfect wedding day imaginable. One more thing." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. "Open it." Inside was a delicate gold chain holding a polished fairy token, the same type used on their favorite harbor route. "It's beautiful," Naomi breathed, studying the simple token that gleamed in the fairy lights. "I had it engraved." He pointed to tiny letters etched around the edge. "For days we choose daylight." Naomi's eyes filled with tears as she understood. The token represented all their ferry rides together, but more than that, it represented their choice to love openly, honestly, without shame or secrecy. "It's perfect," she whispered as he fastened the chain around her neck. "I'll never take it off." "Good, because that's my promise to you. Every day for the rest of our lives, I choose daylight with you. Even when the gossip starts up again, when people whisper about the heiress and her working-class husband, especially then, let them whisper. We'll be too busy being happy to care." Naomi touched the fairy token at her throat, feeling its weight settle against her heart like a promise. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we go on our honeymoon, 2 weeks on a cabin cruiser, sailing up the coast. No schedules, no social obligations, just us in the water." "That sounds perfect. And after that?" "After that, we come home and live our life. Sunday dinners with your mother and Tessa, ferry rides on summer evenings, your museum work, my property management, and whatever adventures come our way." Adventures? Well, we'll need to figure out where to live. Your townhouse apartment or my walk-up, or maybe something new that's ours together. I vote for something new, somewhere with a garage for your restored Mustang and a garden where we can grow old together. I love that plan. As they talked about their future, houses and children and the ordinary magic of building a life together, the ferry horn sounded again across the harbor. Other couples were probably taking evening rides, watching the city lights reflect on the water, making their own memories. Should we go for a ferry ride? Naomi suggested. One last time before we're officially an old married couple. We've been married for 6 hours. Exactly. Ancient. Evan laughed and kissed her nose. I'm going to love being ancient with you. They walked hand in hand through the quiet garden, past the white chairs and empty dance floor, toward the gate that led to the street. Tomorrow they'd start their honeymoon. Next week they'd begin house hunting. Someday they'd bring their own children to this garden for Sunday dinners with Grandma Marjorie. But tonight, they were just two people in love, heading to the ferry dock to watch the stars reflect on the harbor water. Thank you, Naomi said as they reached the garden gate. For what? For seeing me. For choosing me. For making me brave enough to choose love over everything else. Thank you for kissing me in that garage. Best 30 seconds of my life. Just 30 seconds? I thought I made a bigger impression than that. Okay. Best 30 seconds until our wedding kiss. That one lasted longer. Naomi laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet neighborhood like music. I plan on making many more impressive kisses in our future. I'm counting on it. The ferry horn sounded again, closer now, calling them toward new adventures and ordinary miracles, and all the days they would choose each other, over and over, in daylight and in darkness, for the rest of their beautiful, imperfect, completely perfect life together. 1 year later, the museum's children's education wing opened on a crisp October morning exactly 1 year after the groundbreaking ceremony. Naomi stood in the bright, cheerful main classroom, watching third graders from the local elementary school explore the interactive exhibits with wide-eyed wonder. Miss Naomi, a little girl named Sophia, tugged on her sleeve. Look, I made a volcano. The science station was indeed producing an impressive eruption of foam and food coloring, much to the delight of Sophia and her classmates. That's amazing, Sophia. What did you learn about volcanoes? They're powerful and dangerous, but they also make new land. My teacher says that's like life. Sometimes scary things help create beautiful things. Out of the mouths of babes, Naomi thought, smiling. That's very wise, Sophia. Some of the best things in life start with something that seems scary. Like kissing your family's driver in a garage, she added silently. Across the room, she spotted Evan helping a group of kids with a simple engineering project, building bridges out of craft sticks and marshmallows. He'd volunteered to help with the opening day activities, and watching him patiently guide small hands and encourage creative thinking made her heart swell with love. Mrs. Rourke, the teacher, Ms. Martinez, approached with a clipboard. The children wanted me to ask if they can come back next week. They're already planning their next experiments. Of course. That's exactly what this space is for, inspiring curiosity and learning. Mrs. Rourke. Even after a year of marriage, the name still made her smile. After the students left, chattering excitedly about volcanoes and bridges and everything they'd discovered, Naomi and Evan walked through the quiet building together. Success? He asked, slipping his arm around her waist. Complete success. Did you see how engaged they were? How excited? I did. Your father would be proud. I know. She leaned against his shoulder as they paused in front of a plaque dedicated to her father's memory. I can feel him here, you know, in every child who discovers something new, every moment of a wonder and learning. They made their way home to the house they'd bought 6 months earlier. A charming Victorian with a big front porch, a garden perfect for entertaining, and a garage where Evan's beautifully restored Mustang gleamed in cherry red glory. Dinner at your mother's tonight? Evan reminded her as they pulled into their driveway. She's making that salmon dish you like, and Tessa's bringing dessert. Perfect. I love Sunday dinners. Even when my mother starts dropping hints about grandchildren? Especially then. Her hints are getting less subtle by the week. Naomi laughed. Marjorie had indeed become increasingly interested in their family planning timeline, though she tried to be discreet about it. Speaking of family planning, Naomi said casually as they walked up the front steps. Yeah? How do you feel about starting sooner rather than later? Evan stopped walking. How much sooner? Instead of answering, Naomi pulled a small wrapped package from her purse. Early Christmas present? With trembling hands, Evan opened the package to find a pair of tiny baby shoes, soft yellow leather with delicate laces. Naomi, he breathed. Are you? 8 weeks. I wanted to wait until I was sure, but then I realized I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Evan whooped with joy, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around on their front porch while she laughed and held onto his shoulders. We're having a baby, he said, setting her down gently and cupping her face in his hands. We're having a baby, she confirmed, a little person who's going to be half you and half me and completely perfect. Have you told your mother? Not yet. I thought we'd tell everyone together at dinner tonight. She's going to cry. She's going to plan the nursery before we finish making the announcement. I love your mother. I love you, Naomi said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. I love our life. I love our future. I love everything we've built together. As they kissed on their front porch, the ferry horn sounded across the harbor, the same sound that had been the soundtrack to their courtship, their engagement, their wedding, and now this moment of new beginning. Ferry ride later, Evan suggested, to celebrate? Always, Naomi agreed, touching the ferry token that still hung around her neck every day. For days we choose daylight, right? For all our days, he promised, the ordinary ones and the extraordinary ones and everything in between. And as they walked into their house together, planning how to share their news and dreaming about the future they would build with their child, the afternoon sun painted everything golden, their home, their love, and all the beautiful, imperfect, completely perfect days still to come. The end.